Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday or Thursday. I forgot. Wednesday or Thursday, I think. No, whatever day it is. Wednesday or Thursday, July the 3rd. I know it's July the 3rd. That one Thursday, July the 3rd. I just checked my notes. And with a lot of things going on in the world, the House passing the famous bill, the beautiful bill, the situation up in New York, we say hello to our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. Bill, with all due respect to you and to Urgent Agenda, you have 90 minutes of free time that you can tell us for the next 90 minutes everything you want to tell us. You can repeat yourself 150 times if you wish, but I just want to make sure that you are given the Hakeem Jeffries treatment. Bill.
Ah, I yield my time to Silvio Canto.
Hey, listen,
Uh,
that's a good yield. I like that
yeah,
yield. That's a good yield. But I thank you so much for that. Otherwise, I was sitting here saying, "Gee, do I have enough? Do I have enough tape on the machine to tape everything that Bill was going to say today?" But thank you so much for joining us on the day before July 4th. Here, I think we're getting some rain. How about there?
Oh well, we have a. I see the warning light is on my weather warning system, and we're supposed to get heavy thunderstorms, but the thunderstorm warning is going off in about 45 minutes, and then I don't know what comes after that. They'll figure out something to keep us listening. But yes,
Well,
we had very grim forecasts for this afternoon, and as usual, they didn't materialize.
Well, the one thing I can tell you is that a couple of friends of mine in New York are very angry with the Yankees. So, but I know you're not a Yankee fan, but the Yankees have apparently hit a real wall there, and people in New York are not happy with them. So, if you run into any Yankee fans, they may not be very friendly today, Bill.
When are they ever friendly? I am, as you know, an old Brooklyn Dodger fan. I don't know what they're angry about with the Yankees now, but the baseball fans in New York tend to be angry. I mean, they make it part of their lives to be angry at someone. I remember when reporters in the 1950s would say about Walter O'Malley, who owned the Dodgers and who made the decision to go to Los Angeles, that he was one of the three most hated men in Brooklyn. The others being Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler. So
Well, I believe that. I
yes,
believe that, and the 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 problem with the Yankees is that they've been thrown out of first place by none other than the Toronto Blue Jays, and that I'm
what a
sure has
come down.
caused. Yeah, that is I'm sure creating a lot of anger in New York for the Canadian trade deal.
Oh
So
yes.
they may want to put a bigger tariff on Canada now that the Blue Jays have actually kicked them out of first place. But as they say, there's a lot of season left. Well, a lot to talk about today, Bill. And you got this gigantic legislation that passed in the House. The city of New York, of course, may have a very interesting mayor coming up soon. Some trade deals, and then of course July the 4th. I guess it's you know always a day to celebrate, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But let's start with this so-called beautiful bill. Somebody asked me, was somebody from Univision was asking me one day if there was anything that I would change about the bill, and I said I think I would change the name. For some
Yes.
reason, the idea of a big beautiful bill is kind of a risk to take, especially if it doesn't get approved. In this case, it was, but
Yes.
it got done, and it got done 218 212. I
Yes.
think that was the final number. So it pretty much came down along party lines, except two representatives who voted against it. I look at it, Bill. There's some concerns that I have about the public spending and all of that, but I look at it as very simple. If I'm a member of Congress and I'm looking at this bill, I'm saying to myself, I've got two options here. I can go with Trump and trust what he is doing and bet on Trump succeeding, or I can go with the Democrats and there's nothing there other than Trump is Hitler. I mean,
Yes, that's
that's kind
right.
of how I see it, Bill.
That's exactly you got it right. You got it right. I don't know what the Democrats do now. I don't know what they have to fall back on. They have tried to block and obstruct this law bill, which will soon be law. I think tomorrow by tomorrow night. for months, and they lost. Didn't lose by much. But if they think that's any kind of a compliment to them, they ought to take a look at a national map of the last election. Trump did not win that many elections in the recent presidential election and states by that much, but over the country overall, he won majorities in districts that Republicans had never touched before. And if you look at a national map, you see it all filled with red. And that is what the Republicans have, and that is what the Democrats are up against.
In fact, if you look at the map on a county by county basis,
Yes,
and there's like 4,000 counties in the country, including 254 here in Texas. If you look at the country on a county by county map, and I tested this, so I invite anybody to test it. You can look at the map on a county by county, and you can draw a straight line from San Francisco to Washington, D.C., Bill. And I think you only go over two counties that voted for Kamala Harris. One of them is in St. Louis,
right.
and the other one as you get close to Maryland. But
Hmm.
the everything else was pretty much red. And in some
Yes,
of those counties, I mean, he won by fairly big margins. So I agree with you. I mean, he did win. I think he did win a national victory, Bill, even though the popular vote was close. And you could argue that the electoral college was not so close, but the popular vote was, I think it was 3
yes.
million votes. But you can argue that it was more national because how much of the Democrat vote came from LA and New York City and Chicago.
Oh, absolutely, sure,
So
sure. But
yeah, go ahead,
I
please.
mean, he won all seven of the swing states, and that's a miracle, a political miracle. I mean, nobody expected it, and he is going into. Well, we're going to have some elections. Remember, within the next year, we're going to have a governorship election in Virginia. We're going to have a mayoral election in New York that I know you want to talk about, in which, for the first time, we might see pictures of Lenin on the walls at Gracie Mansion, and a lot of other of these British call them by-elections, and that may be very good indicators. And we also have next year, remember, very very important gubernatorial election in New York, which is now turning into a fascinating story, which may result in a Republican governor of New York, which would then set off the fireworks.
That's right, and I think that the some somebody was I was listening to some of the commentaries and some of the the post game commentary, and people were talking, and I think if people would ask me, Bill, um, what is going to happen with this bill, because a lot of the media is saying, what are the consequences going to be in 2024 and so on, or 2026. And I think the way I would answer that question is saying, tell me where the economy is going to be in July of 26,
Sure.
and I'll tell you whether people will speak highly of this bill. But obviously, if a year from now you and I are talking about a recession or an economy stuck in the mud or whatever, then yes, that's going to hurt the people who voted for it. But if there's any kind of success out of this economy, and today's employment numbers were actually pretty good from what I can see, and just the overall, the price of gasoline, inflation, things are trending in the right direction, Bill. So that's got to be helpful to President Trump, Bill.
Oh yes. Well, look, I never predict the future because you don't know what's going to be tomorrow morning. But uh, yes, if things stay as they are, and if the president maintains his position, so far he has been remarkably capable and lucky in maintaining that position. I mean, he is now, I think, around the world considered truly the leader of the free world. I mean, they may not like it, they may not like him personally, and sometimes he may irritate other countries by quite a bit. But the fact of the matter is that up until recently, he was regarded as a guy who might be there for a while, and then we'll get rid of him and get one of the good old time American Democrats who will give everything away. But he didn't go away. He didn't go away. He had some terrific victories in the Middle East. He had some good victories here at home, and I think he is now seen as one of the truly most important statesmen in the world. In the polls that are taken, and on the cusp of greatness. If things go well for him, if things go, it's a big if, But if things go well for him, he will be on this cusp of greatness and be seen as the go-to man internationally. And not it's not unreasonable to think that he may be a man who people start referring to as the next great statesman in world history, because he's getting to that point.
Well, he's making, he's sort of he's being very relevant in everything.
Yes,
I mean, he's one of these leaders who is having an impact. For example, with NATO. Look, I'm impressed with what he's done with NATO because
absolutely.
I think NATO was getting to the point where a lot of Americans were saying, "Is this really worth it for us to be defending all these countries that don't want to defend themselves?"
Yeah,
So he's been able to win that argument.
that's the
Uh,
point.
an argument that other leaders have not won. I think with trade also, he seems to be getting his way. I mean, look what happened with Canada, where they
Yes.
decided to put that digital tax or whatever, and he said, "No, you're not," and he pulled out, and immediately they come back to him. So clearly, people fear going against him, and that's a good
Yes,
thing if you're the president of the United States,
you
Bill.
bet. You bet. And remember that he is making deals with very, very important countries. There, the news this morning said, and I again we these things can always go off track, but we are about to make a very big deal with India. India is the largest population of the world, and it's a democratic nation, and a country that I think wants to have very good relations with the United States, especially if Trump grows in stature internationally. I
Right.
mean, they're not like the old Indian governments. They're not beholden to the Soviet Union or to some a little third rate monster somewhere. They are beholden to no one. And I think that a good alliance with the United States would do India a great deal of good, especially as it develops its sciences and engineering. It would also do the United States a great deal of good. It is not a bad thing to be on good terms with the largest population in the world.
Right. And a very well educated population, Bill.
Yes,
This is something that, impresses me so much. I mean, here in the Dallas Fort Worth area, we have a lot of Indian Americans. I mean, or people who come from whatever they're called from that part of I think they're called Indians.
yes, that's they
And
are.
yeah. And their kids are always tops in all the schools around the area. I mean, every time you look at a picture of who is number one student, it turns out to be a young Indian American. I
That's
mean,
right.
they have tremendous family structure. They're very well educated.
Yes.
I mean, what they call IT or information technology, they lead the way.
That's exactly right. And what's interesting about them is that they are willing to study in any country. They're willing to live in any country. They do not pull any of this identity politics stuff, where they come in or somebody comes to the United States and says, "Well, I'm living here, but my basic family structure is Morocco or any one of those countries, and that is my real home, etc. And I will not allow for any anti-Muslim expressions, even though I live in America. None of that with the Indians. None of that with the Indians. They know how the world works. I think they appreciate how they can become even more and more involved with that world and more successful. And I think any country that has them as an ally has a great asset.
Well, I tell you, just from the standpoint of how well educated their people are, and the tremendous economic contribution that people like that can make to the United States, having all these engineers that we can do business with, and all these very smart people. I mean, I think it's a wonderful thing. Also, something
Mm,
else you mentioned India, something else too. I do think this current president that they have is more inclined to capitalism. It seems that for a while there, they had more, more inclined to socialism, or at least not don't mean radical socialism, but it seems like this fellow is more aware of capitalism, and he apparently is a very gets along very well with Trump,
yes.
which is a good thing. No, that's right. And also, he also made a deal with Vietnam, which I think, at least for me, maybe for you too, Bill, the idea that we the president of Vietnam would be in the White House shaking hands with the president of the United States.
Yes.
But I mean, the whole thing is just, you cannot help but to go back for me to a younger time when we had 500,000 troops in that country,
That's
and we
exactly
were
right.
fighting a war and bombing them like crazy. And here is the president of Vietnam, talking to the president of the United States, and everything is great. I mean, I don't know. It really is significant. Now, Vietnam, what I think is interesting about them is that they have a strong economy, but a lot of it is just they're sort of like the cheap labor for the Chinese. And
You could say that, yeah.
the Chinese use Vietnam. Again, this is from what I'm reading. They use Vietnam as a way of getting into the U.S. market, or maybe going around Chinese tariffs.
That's true. The Asia is quite divided. It's divided in a fascinating way. I mean, I remember. I'm old enough to remember when Made in Japan was considered not a curse, but an insult to a product or to a company. Oh, you're made in Japan, eh? It was cheap equipment, cheap supplies. Came right after the Second World War, and even though the political people internationally were making some progress with keeping the new Japan on our side, overall it was considered a defeated nation and a defeated culture. But later on, they got into the swing of things, and Made in Japan became a prestigious name because they worked at building the best quality products, getting into the American market, building cars for the American market, which was almost unheard of at the time. And Japan today is one of the great economies of the world. It may not be as great as it was 20 years ago because of the rise of China, but awfully important. And they're important to our foreign policy now.
That's right. That's right. It's a very strategic location there in that part of the world. South Korea, the same way. So that's the deal. And I think there's talk that he's negotiating with China, I believe too, that he may have a trade deal with China. I don't know if
Yes.
that's been confirmed, but I know he's talking about it. But one thing I like about his attitude, or President Trump's attitude, is like he said, well, on the 9th of July, we're just going to send you a letter and tell you what you got.
Yes.
I just,
Yes.
it's kind of an
Yes.
interesting attitude. It's like saying, okay, look, if we don't hear from you by July the 9th, this is the rent you're going to pay, kind of
Yes.
kind of attitude. And I
Well,
I
he's
think that's
very
kind of interesting.
gracious. He's very gracious as long as he's winning, and
That's right.
he makes it plain that he expects to win, and
Right.
he expects that victory to be recognized.
That's right. He does expect to win, and he did a little bit of that today with the famous bill, because as soon as he got the news, he's going to sign it tomorrow,
Yes,
which
uh, it's going to
which is
go into effect, and one of the great things about this bill is that it puts money in people's pockets.
right.
This is what he has needed. He has needed legislation that directly puts money into people's pockets, not as part of a something at the end of the year or as part of some other piece of legislation, but people will get the continuation of the tax cuts that they have now. That was not guaranteed before, and they will get extra money in the form of government programs that are going to be altered in such a way that they will have essentially a check. And
Hmm.
this is what he's needed all along. People, when they say they get a tax cut, they don't want to hear an hour of explanation
No.
of where it's coming from. They want to see the money in their wallets, and now they're going to have it.
Well, one thing, I guess it depends how retroactive they make it, but if they make it retroactive to the first of the year, then people earning tips right now are going to get a bigger check the next time,
That's right,
just
exactly.
from that alone.
And the
And
de-
and
and the Republic, I mean, sorry, the
no,
Democrats have nothing to answer to. Nothing.
see, that's almost disbelief, because
Yes.
you would have thought that there would have been somebody in the House who said, you know what, I like that bit about the tips, and I like that about the overtime pay. You would have thought somebody would have come up with that, or at least gone along with the bill just for that reason, just to tell the people in your district, yeah, I may not like the whole thing, but I do like that, so I'm going to vote for it. But I mean, that what position are the Democrats in right now? This is history now. It's already been done. So basically, they're on the wrong side of overtime and tips. That's not a good place to be, Bill.
No, no, it's not. Well, they seem to get on the wrong side of most issues. They work at it. They work at it. I mean, I don't think they're ever happy unless they're miserable.
Well,
Really, I mean, they look at their what's left of the Democratic Party. If you even want to call it a party, it
right,
doesn't seem to be much of a party anymore. I mean, they seem to make losing an objective, and one that
that's
they're
right,
very proud of.
right.
And they are about to, I think, elect in New York City the first communist mayor of a large American city, and some of them seem thrilled by it,
Yeah,
even if he gets himself put in jail in the first 3 months.
right. Well,
That,
you're taking me to our next topic, which is really
ah,
good because that's where we want to be. We want to talk about this gentleman in New York City
yes,
who apparently wants to. I mean, so many crazy things this guy has said. It's really hard to believe that he would win a nomination for anything but New York City. But maybe that tells you a lot more about New York City than the country. But a lot of Democrats are not happy with him. I mean, I think one of your senators came out against him, the lady senator whose
yes,
name I
Gillibrand,
always, yeah,
Gillibrand.
Gillibrand. And I think there have been some members of Congress who've come out against him. But it
Well,
seems like other
or
people are afraid of him, like Schumer.
yes, Schumer is afraid of him because he Schumer is up for reelection. He is not that popular. He is on the Democratic Party just alone. He is losing votes in any primary to AOC. Now that's like that's like losing votes to the dumbest person in your high school class. It's I mean she may take him on in a primary, which she could win and go on to be the next senator from New York. Uh, I don't know if it's going to happen. These things are big ifs because AOC is one of these people who's very can be very charming and win in certain areas, but in the end, she usually doesn't wind up with very much because when people find that what she's really for, they get frightened.
Right. And also when they find out that her whole story about being a girl from the Bronx is a bit of a joke, that she actually apparently grew up in a upscale neighborhood or something.
Yes,
And I mean,
right.
but I think in the case of New York, Bill, the question that everybody's asking, I mean, those of us who don't live in New York, if this guy wins, what are some of the changes? For example, will the Yankees be able to maintain their name, or is that going to be a capitalist or a male? What do they call it? Male supremacy
A
name,
white
white
supremacy,
supremacist name,
and yes,
or
and
is the Washington statue or Jefferson statue or any other of the statues in New York? I'm being facetious, but I mean, are any of those going to come down? I mean, is this guy really going to be able to do anything that he's saying, Bill?
well, he's going to try. He could divide his opinions into two distinct areas. One is foreign policy. I have no idea why the mayor of New York City should be involved in foreign policy. The last I looked, we were in the United States. He might be disappointed by that, but he has to live with it. And the other, of course, is city policy. But this is a guy who is a true socialist. He's a real left winger. He is a Marxist. He has many contacts, which will be very disturbing within the groups that we would call the Communist Party groups. And basically, that he has now won the Democratic nomination, and he is. It doesn't look as if he's going to change anything in his campaign. He seems to feel that he won because of who he is, and that the people of New York knew who he was and knew what the things he believed in, and they believe in it too. He really believes that. Actually, he won by a fluke, but it's a big fluke and an important fluke.
Well, I think you would agree with me, Bill, that he had good timing in the
Oh
sense
yes,
that the Democrat Cuomo was extremely unpopular, not exactly one of the best politicians right now in New York City. In fact, I was kind of surprised that he came down to be mayor. I really
yes.
was. I didn't expect that. Maybe he thought it was going to be an easy victory. And then you've got the Mayor Adams, who I guess is very unpopular there, although outside of the country, I mean, he doesn't look that bad to us here. especially since he took a more realistic posture on these caravans and these, the illegal immigration problem.
Yes,
But I
yes.
think the problems with New York City, Bill, and you know this better than me, the problems are more economic than anything else, taxation. And if he goes too far, he's going to kill the finance industry, or at least they're going to pull out. And where's he going to get the money? I mean, what rich
Well,
people is he going to tax?
well, that's the point. The city is already overtaxed,
Yes.
and the city depends very heavily on taxes from Wall Street, from the financial sector. If the financial sector should go down the drain, New York State will go down the drain, not just
Yes.
the city. And here's this guy who comes along, who has a history of making statements that could have easily been made by the mayor of Moscow, Russia. We're going to have statues of Lenin all over New York City, and a lot of the young people in New York will think that that's just fine. We're becoming more of an international city. Well, yes, if international means the United States, Russia, and maybe a little bit of Iran.
Or maybe a little bit of Cuba.
A little bit of Cuba, yes. Yes, he's very, very interested in getting the Cuban American vote, which, to put it mildly, has not exactly been behind him.
No, he's going to have a very hard time with that one. I guess the good news for him is that I don't believe that there's a large Cuban American. I know there is in New Jersey, in Union City, New Jersey. There's a big Cuban American population there, but I don't believe in New York City. I don't think there's many there. Not as many, perhaps, as there would be somewhere else. But if my late father was around, I think when he would read about this project of grocery stores or public bodegas, I guess I think my late father would say, that worked so well in Cuba.
Yes.
That was one of the wonders of social. I mean, basically, they killed private industry in Cuba, and all
Yes.
those little bodegas were a big part of private industry. But now it's interesting though, because when I've heard this guy Bill talk, he'll say something. He gets challenged a little bit by the reporter on his beliefs, and he says, "Well, no, I am a follower of Dr. Martin Luther King when he talked about justice and I mean, he kind of goes in that direction. I mean,
Well, he's very charming. Remember, he's very charming, and when he talks and wants to sound reasonable, he can sound reasonable. The trouble is, it defies everything about him. He's the most unreasonable man ever to run for mayor of a large American city. He is a Marxist, and
right.
this is not a Marxist country. But he is going to try to get around it by having little conferences with little leaders of ethnic groups, and they'll come away saying, "We are satisfied." By
Right.
his explanations of having called Hitler a great man, or having decided to take over all the bodegas
Right.
and to have a government-run grocery stores. Yes, we came away thinking this is a very reasonable man,
Right.
and that's what he's aiming for, just for the first 5 minutes, so he can get elected. Then
Right.
then when he's actually mayor and he starts taking over housing in New York, and people realize that their apartment is essentially owned by the city, they may begin to worry.
Well, that's right. And that's,
Yes.
again, going back to my late father, what he would say is that Castro didn't want to do away with the private bodegas first. He just wanted to have an alternative so that people could go to a public bodega. And then eventually the private bodegas went out of business because they were or thrown out of business. So these people, they have a plan. And that's what scares me about these people.
Yes,
They
do
have a plan. I mean, they basically go inch by inch. And I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to appeal to people, all the social justice thing. But a couple of things about him, Bill, that I wanted to get your reaction on. When they were having his victory party, you would have thought that it was a convention of white Baptists
Yes.
in the South.
Yes.
I mean, I kept looking at this thing and saying, wait a minute, what is this video from? A white Baptist church in the old South or something? There wasn't a single person of color, as they like to say, who
That's
was
right.
cheering anything.
That's right. It's all a front and a farce and a lie, and people I hope will eventually realize it, or are gonna have a disaster in November because if he becomes the mayor of New York, and he is likely to, he can talk to all the bankers he wants. They're going to get out as fast as they can. I mean, they have responsibilities to their institutions, and there's not going to be anybody who really wants to remain in New York. New York will become a wasteland, and I know bankers who have told me that
Right.
they don't believe that New York has very far to go, especially if they're under the control of a guy like this, because it isn't just him. It's going to be who is this commissioner going to be? How many years did she spend in prison? Uh, why did she get her education at the University of Moscow? And it's going to be people like that who are going to him under the people he appoints. That's the first indication you get in New York of how serious a man is.
That's right. No, he is, like you say, he's really smart. He's sharp. He's charming.
Yes,
But I just saw a poll that he's at 35%, Bill.
yes. Well, that's of the Democratic Party. I don't think that's the overall poll. It may be, but if it is only because there is nobody else. There's nobody right now truly running against him. The Republican Party in New York is an absolute disgrace. This is an opportunity they have not had in years and years to have an opponent whose every quote can be used against him.
Right.
And the only person running for mayor on the Republican side is Curtis Lee, a nice man, right out of the 1970s. I mean, this is the old guard Republican Party. They don't show much of an interest in the race. You would think that in a city with as much talent and glitter as New York, they could come up with a first class candidate because this guy is not can be beaten. This Marxist they're putting up, he can be beaten
Yeah. I mean,
just the way Giuliani won his
right.
election.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is have a Republican with a good message and a good
Right.
advertising campaign, and like you say, they can take all these words and flood the market with them. But well, I guess the good news is that what is it 5 months to the election or 4 months to the election? So hopefully over the next it's
November.
November, right? So we're 4 months away. Hopefully there will be some consolidation of some of the. I know I've heard some rumors about Cuomo dropping out or somebody dropping out, endorsing Adams. That might work. I don't know all the dynamic of that, but it's going to be an interesting race because the big problem now for the Democrats that I see, Bill, now that this beautiful bill has passed and that's behind them now they're going to have to start answering questions
Yes.
about this guy running. And
Oh yeah.
do
Oh,
you agree with? And I think that's going to put a lot of Democrats in a very tough situation, Bill.
very tough. Even the New York Times, which could make a pact with the devil, as long as the devil was pro-abortion. But even the New York Times said he is unqualified, and then they added a word to it, and I can't recall exactly what the word was, but it's essentially saying he is especially unqualified for the office. And I can't believe them taking that back. I think they realize now that they are in trouble, as will be every institution in New York if he gets elected, and they don't want him to get elected.
Well, maybe they'll end up endorsing nobody. Probably that's what it'll, because I cannot see them endorsing the Republican. And with everything they wrote about Cuomo, I don't think they'll be endorsing him.
No.
So maybe they'll endorse Adams. I don't know. But looking at it from the outside, I mean, just from down here in Texas, if somebody said to me, which one of these choices is better for the city,
Yes.
I would say I'll go with Adams because at least I know him, and I think Adams has at least the potential to change and get a little bit better.
Well, yes, and Adams could be running with other people as a coalition ticket.
I hope
Here's
so.
going to, and it could be some good people. If what you just heard in the background, by the way, was my emergency radio going off, warning us
So,
about the weather.
okay. Well, I did hear that, and
Yes.
I hope you're getting ready for the storm.
Well,
Did
as
you buy your
usual,
batteries?
I have a small AA battery that I'll take out of an old radio,
Right.
and I'll probably use it for 5 minutes. What are they saying? About
Or-
5:05 p.m. We might have a thunderstorm. Now, as I've told you many times, a thunderstorm in New York is defined as two drops. Two drops, and it never comes where it's supposed to be. If they're saying it's going to be here in Westchester County, it'll probably wind up in Kansas,
Well,
and that's what it'll be.
well, it kind of reminds me of the cold front in Texas. Whenever we are supposed to have a cold front, it always gets very exaggerated, and it turns out to be nothing more than a few drops of freezing rain, not the storm that they always call for. But Bill, July 4th, any plans that you have? Any memories of New York and July 4th?
Well, July 4th was always very special in New York.
Mhm.
After all, New York was I believe New York was the first capital of the United States, and of course, George Washington was inaugurated here in New
Right,
York.
that's right.
And it was also the home of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is one of the great naval construction yards in American history. Built, I used to see it all the time going over the Manhattan Bridge. You look down and you saw aircraft carriers being built, and battleships. The battleship Arizona was built here. The battleship Missouri was built here. Very big national defense presence, especially out on Long Island, where we had Grumman and Republic. In recent years, it has been a little less exciting in that area. It has been a little less a part of the country and more just New York City, because the governments in New York have been left-wing governments who
Right.
didn't care much about national defense,
No.
and we've had some mayors who have not exactly excited the public. Giuliani did, and he became, despite anything that's happened to him since, he became one of the great mayors in the history of New York. He said he would solve crime, and he solved crime. And
Well, I will say something about Giuliani. If anybody had said to me right after President Bush, I really thought Giuliani had a chance to be president. He ran a terrible campaign and never quite took off. But I really thought Giuliani, not McCain, would be the candidate in 2008. But that
didn't,
means going back a little bit
yeah,
to remember that. But the one thing I remember about July 4th, not that I remember, but I remember reading about it, was the day that Lou Gehrig said, "I'm the luckiest man on earth," and
yes,
that was on July 4th, 1939, and
yes.
that great movie, Pride of the Yankees. And I don't know if it happened exactly the way the movie depicted it.
I think pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a great movie, and that, of course, is July 4th,
Yes,
19.
what he said was, I consider myself
Right,
the luckiest man on the face of the earth, and you heard when said that, you heard the echo of it through other sound systems. So and kids would go around impersonating that. By the
that's
way,
right, that's
I
right,
consider myself, the happiest man on the face of the earth, face of the earth.
right.
Uh,
That's right. No, I know what you mean. 'Cause I've heard that. I've heard people talk like that, and but I know for me personally that's it's always fun to. I always enjoy that movie. I don't care how many times I've seen it. I've always enjoyed that movie. There's some things in that movie that I don't know if they actually did happen. One of them was when that kid was in the hospital. He took a baseball to the boy in the
yeah.
hospital, and he gave it to the boy. And then on July 4th, 1939, when he's going to the ballpark to say goodbye, the boy shows up and says, "Hey, Lou, remember me? I'm the kid at the hospital." Again, I don't know if that actually happened,
There
but
were
I
a lot
love
of there were a lot of myths, but the great thing about Lou Gehrig is he was called the Iron Man of baseball, and it was heartbreaking that the Iron Man of baseball wound up literally not being able to raise his arms. I mean, he had the disease that eventually was named for him, Lou Gehrig's
right.
disease, but he worked. They wanted to do something for him in New York, and it turned out he didn't have health insurance.
Hmm.
So the mayor of New York, I think it was Mayor LaGuardia, in fact, it was Mayor LaGuardia, who gave him a city job as a youth officer of some kind, which gave him health insurance. And
Wow.
he came to work every day until 2 weeks before he died. And they had to
Hmm.
carry him into the building, but he worked. and he was still, in a way, the Iron Man of baseball.
Well,
And
he
Go
is,
ahead.
as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
Yeah,
as far I know that Cal Ripken came later, but Lou Gehrig was just an absolutely amazing story. And
he was.
I don't know that movie. I always recommend that movie to everybody
Pride
because
of the Yankees.
Pride of the Yankees and Gary Cooper, right, playing
Yes.
Lou Gehrig, I believe, and even Babe Ruth made a cameo appearance in
He
that
did.
movie.
Yes.
It was just an absolutely great movie and a great story, and of course, it happened on July the 4th. Well, Bill, enjoy yourself on July the 4th. I hope you don't get a lot of rain, and we look forward to coming back next week and keeping up with all the stuff and getting your weekly reports on the mayor to be, potentially next mayor, who is quite a character.
Watch his interaction with President Trump. He's
Mm,
already interacting with the President of the United States, and he doesn't understand that Trump has weapons that this new mayor or potential mayor never thought of.
right, and Trump is much better at this than anybody. As
Yes.
well so that's the other story. Now he perhaps wants to get arrested, Bill, so that's some. I mean, what would be greater for a guy like this than to get arrested
He,
because he refuses to cooperate with ICE?
yes, he'll become a martyr. He thinks. He thinks.
He thinks, but I'm not
Yes.
sure. Well, have
Talk
a
to you.
great
Yes.
July 4th, Bill, and thank you so much as always for joining us.
It's a pleasure. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, we'll do it again. Our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda, another week in review with Bill. Of course, the big story is the mayor in New York City, what's going to happen in that election, and then the bill that just happened that went out today or was passed by the House, which will become the law of the land, as they like to say, tomorrow, July the 4th, just like President Trump wanted it to be. He wanted it on his desk on July 4th. Well, he's going to get it. Pretty good story. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Enjoy your July the 4th, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.